Hello there, lads and ladies. Welcome back finally to another comic review. And if you're wondering about the hair, I'm very upset at my hairdresser, I should say. She's a little bit annoyed at the fact that her family's kind of got some issues and all that. That kind of came out in her performance today in the haircut. Knew I should have gone to my barber's. After all, he's an awful lot cheaper, and to be God's honest, he's an awful lot better. I thought, why not? Since it's a family friend, you know, she's been down a hard time, so I thought I'd say to her, you know what, go ahead and do me hair. She's cut it very nicely on the sides. She's done the back quite nicely, a good shape on the back. But this bit here left so much on the top that it looks honestly like a freaking mountain that you could just dive off of, basically. Not all too happy, and she also left so much at the back that I've had to cut an awful lot of it. I should have shown you. I have an awful lot of thick hair, so it kind of sprouted up at the back because I've got a king's crown. I've got a widow's peak and a king's crown, so it kind of sprouts up kind of like the Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park, or a peacock basically. So not really happy about that. I won't be going back to her anytime soon. So you know, Zoe, thanks, but no thanks. Anyway. Little rant over. Today, we are here to do a comic of King Kong. Now, with King Kong, this is the sequel to the Skull Island comic. I would have gone over the movie version, but to be honest, I can't really find the original Kong comic, so I thought, so that people have seen the film enough, I'm going to basically go and do the sequel. And this is the prequel to Godzilla vs. Kong. And I might possibly do that sooner or later, but I kind of want to do Dominion after this one first. So, yeah, I'll probably jump into that later on. But anyway, the story starts. We are on Skull Island, talking with one of the chaps who was in the last film of Skull Island. This was back in 1975 or so. And I think this is 50 years later. He's a little bit older, and he's actually got the opportunity to meet a group of pilots, which are very helpful for keeping the islands safe, the island's crew safe. Because back in the 1970s, they didn't have much for protection. They just had helicopters, and an awful lot of their forces were in the Vietnam War at the time, so it's not like they could have much protection going into Kong Island. And plus, this was meant to be a secret mission. And now that it's kind of out there, that Skull Island is a thing, now they have more opportunities to have the proper protection with them. And this group of pilots are not really unique in their in a certain sense. I mean, yeah, they're kind of the usual ragtag group of easygoing people that have their own lives here and there. The one thing I do like about their relationship is that it focuses an awful lot on teamwork, which is something you see an awful lot in those high-flying films, kind of like Top Gun and stuff like that. Is the camaraderie ship, which I love to see in army films, basically, because if it's one thing that's bred into you is camaraderie ship and brotherhood, basically, of sacrificing your life for your brother, and he's going to do the same for you. Because if you are not willing to sacrifice your life to protect that person next to you, then you both die. It's kind of like what Russell Crowe says in 300, basically, when he's explaining to Ephialtes what it means to be a Spartan, basically. You have to be at peak performance, absolutely perfect, or the whole phalanx falters. From thigh to neck, the shield that they carry has to cover from thigh to neck to protect yourself and the person next to you. And I kind of like how he says to Ephialtes, raise your shield. Where Xerxes told him to kneel, Leonidas basically told him to stand up, basically, to lift his shield, because that's what it was to be Greek back then. It was to be strong, to be the best it can be, basically. and Ephialtes was not that, basically, which led to him unfortunately betraying Leonidas and the rest of the 300 Spartans. Which was a shame, really, because I think that there's like this clip where he looks towards Ephialtes and points at him with his spear and then says, "You there, Ephialtes, may you live forever." Which was kind of like an insult, basically. It's to say, like, you know, you're not going to die a soldier's death, basically. You're not going to die a honourable death, in a certain sense. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. It focuses on this young lass who is the captain of these pilots. It's not Tam. I've completely forgotten her name already. See, I'm bad with names, unfortunately. Her name is... I know I should do... I literally just read this as well. I just tend to skip past the names half the time, really. Not Carl Johanna, that's the woman they meet on the mission, basically. No, anyway. We'll just call her the captain, shall we? Sorry. My memory is just bad. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, with the captain, she basically has an awful lot of doubts that she is able to do the job correctly, as you would in a particular job set with certain responsibilities. You're going to have doubts, which is understandable. But you need to have the opportunity to find that confidence within yourself to better yourself, and it in turns better your team, basically. So basically, her friend, who I just said was Tam, she is in a coma. She was fighting some beasts on the islands alongside the captain, and unfortunately got caught in the crossfire with another creature, which led to her plane crashing, and she ended up in a coma, unfortunately. And this is what leads to her having these moments of freezing, moments of psychological trauma going back to that day. And there are like small instances where it captures it beautifully, where she is like struggling in that turmoil, which we all do end up having that big unfortunate instance sometimes, like especially when you're in a war zone, basically. Shell shock is like one of those things from the First World War. It's something people used to look at and discuss because they just used to think of people who suffered shell shock as cowards. But unfortunately, it's just something in your brain that just like snaps, it just triggers, that causes you to have PTSD, uncontrollable shaking, like hardness to breathe, basically. So it's understandable that people would like look at this and think, oh, well, they're just cowards. No, they weren't. It's an involuntary trigger in the brain which was meant to protect you. It was like the last step measure for your body to basically say that no, you're keeping your body alive. If it means me breaking you like from mind left to right to lobe, basically, I'm going to break your mind to get you to protect yourself, basically. But it's not at that point. She's still having these mental struggles, basically, on whether or not if she's good to lead her team, basically. Anyway, the mission is for them to protect a group of miners, which are trying to find out what this whole vortex is. It's like a storm vortex, which basically is coming towards the island, and they're trying to understand why these earthquakes are happening on Skull Islands. That is somehow like pulling this vortex towards them. It's like a magnitude. It's like a magnet that's pulling the storm towards the island in a certain sense, which explains why when you see at the beginning of Godzilla vs. Kong, there's a raging storm happening, and I'll get to that later on. But anyway, the team basically, there's a ground team which is basically going out to protect the miners that are working in the area. They come into contact which is known as an animal called a spirit tiger. It's a very beautiful creature. It's basically a tiger with deer antlers. It looks very gorgeous. It's about 15 feet, so in layman's terms it's roughly about the same size, or maybe just a little bit bigger than Kong's hand. Or it's probably about the same size as Kong's forearm, basically. And Kong is about, what, 350 feet, 350 feet, something like that. They basically doubled his stature so he's able to fight Godzilla in the next volume, basically. I'm trying to find this picture of this tiger. I can't seem to find it. I mean, I have a picture of him cracking the tiger's neck, basically. It's awful. So for size difference, this is a human. This is the spirit tiger. And then this... Oh, he's kind of bigger. No, my apologies. He's actually roughly about the same size as Kong's chest, sort of. So that's the size. He's roughly about the same size as Kong's chest. There's a nice picture there of it as well. And there's even a more gruesome one of Kong snapping the neck of the tiger. It's a very mythical creature. In Iwi culture, they basically call this the... it's like a mesmerizing deity, basically, which causes euphoria. It causes confusion. You can hear the heartbeat of the tiger in your head as a way of like distracting its prey, basically, which is similar to some bats, I believe, because bats can cause echolocation, and they sometimes use echolocation to bounce the sound of the echo off of a creature to stun it, basically, to disorientate it, and then that's when they go in and eat it, basically. And then later on we find out they're using cannons. It's kind of like an old trick back in the day with miners and construction workers, or deconstruction workers I should say, where they would use dynamite to blast caves and blast dirt away from certain areas. They do this and it causes an earthquake violently enough to cause Camazots to wake up. Now Camazots is probably one of my favourite destroyer type kaijus, and I wanted to talk about him for the longest time because I thought to myself, why they made Kong fight him, I don't know. I guess because he's been like dormant in Skull Island, so it makes sense really for him to be there. I don't know why. But I always wanted him to be sort of an arch nemesis to Mothra, because you can't think of a perfect person to fight, well, of kaiju to fight than Mothra for Camazots, because Camazots is an awful lot bigger than Mothra, but it is weak to sunlight. It can only come out during the dead of night, basically, and that's what causes him to come out, is because the vortex is coming their way. The earthquake wakes him up, along with his army of other bats, basically. So with Mothra having like her ability to like create this blinding light, it would be the perfect weapon against Camazots. That would be like the perfect even match status, basically, between Mothra's eternal god rays and Camazots' army and his just sheer size and ferocity. Because the way he looks, he can't see, he's blind, so he obviously uses echolocation. And from the way his stature looks, he's quite big, he's quite bulky. He's kind of like a mixture between a dragon and a bat, because he's got horns like a dragon, and his wings are completely like shattered and ripped, and the bones are sticking out, and they're very serrated. So like one hit from him on Mothra, that would spell the end. But Mothra, having her eternal god rays, would be well enough to keep the bat at bay, basically. Plus she has her experience when it comes to her reincarnation, basically. Anyway, before Camazots wakes up and all that, the captain is still having some doubts, even to the point when they are sent out on mission to try and help Kong in a way, basically. They're trying to keep Camazots and his army away from the mining stations, in a certain sense. They're trying to protect the area, basically. Some of the pilots are saying that maybe we should help Kong, because without him here, then the entire area could just be overthrown and we could be killed. Some are saying not to help him because that's his fight. The captain finally has the final say and says, no, we have to help him, or otherwise we, as what's his name that Nomura says, he's one of the other pilots, we're all dead, basically. And then there's like this lovely scene where they all agree unanimously with their captain. That's what I love about camaraderie ship with your fellow soldiers, basically, is that no matter the situation, if you trust them enough, you'll walk into hell with them basically. And there's something about that that's so beautiful that you don't have that type of relationship with like your family or your friends or your lover basically. It's a type of relationship that you know you die for this person and they die for you basically, and it's something really well captured in this comic, and I really do appreciate that. And then there's this instance where Kong has the upper hand, but he's getting surrounded by all these other bats, so obviously Camazots has the opportunity to take the advantage against him, especially in the air. This is where Kong is weak. He can't really get a hold of Camazots very well, and also his deafening screech is causing troubles with Kong. As I've said with the echolocation, it's causing the same thing here. There's even like an instance where his ear starts to bleed, which kind of probably ties into the fact that he knows sign language, because maybe because he's desperate to learn it because he's deaf. Thanks to Camazots, now he's deaf, he now has the opportunity to learn sign language because he can't like hear certain things around him. Although I don't think it's been proven that he's deaf. I think it would have been a nice touch that Camazots did make him deaf. I mean, to be fair, it's obvious fact that if your ear bleeds from like a high decibel level, then your eardrums are perforated. You're fucked. You're deaf. That's it, basically. But that doesn't seem to be the case, because what happens is that when the screech hits him and his ear bleeds, he's kind of lifted up by Camazots and then dropped on the floor by no more than about, say, 50 feet, which isn't much for him, basically. It's not like when King Ghidorah basically lifted up Godzilla and dropped him like from the flaming atmosphere. That is a different story. If that was Kong, he'd be dead. But with Godzilla, I feel like his scales and his dorsal plates protected him from the fall in a certain sense, because they were made out of a harder substance, basically, and since they're part of his body. It's kind of the same if you land on your legs. Your leg would snap, but your upper body, I think, would be fine, basically. It's the same like when you dive from a high height. If you dive at the smallest angle, like if you like use your hands to like push the water away as you go through it, it causes like this little opening, this little gap that you're able to go through in the water. It like pushes the water away so you can safely go through it, basically. I mean, understandable, if you like drop from like 700 feet on your hands, you're still breaking your hands. It doesn't matter how good your technique is. If you like fell from the atmosphere, you're still breaking something. It's just God's darn lucky that Godzilla survived it. It's just safe to say that Kong wouldn't survive the same thing because he's just made of like softer stuff. I mean, he's a mammal, for goodness sakes. He's an ape. There's no difference really when it comes to sheer size, but his anatomy is different because he's less armoured, basically, compared to Godzilla. Anyway, there's this instance where they're fighting the bats, and then the captain has this inclination that Camazots is about to come in and finish the job on Kong. She doesn't want that. She doesn't want like any of her friends and any of her comrades to die anymore, so she takes the opportunity to turn her plane towards Camazots, flies past his eye, and then sonic boom right in front of his face, which was shown in a clip earlier. Well, not a clip, it's a little scene where she is like the fastest of them all. She's able to go like Mach 7 or something. Like, she's able to push those limits because of her very stout and determined body, basically. She was basically born and bred for this, basically. And that causes Camazots to freak out all of a sudden and just drop from the sky and land, and is just dazed and confused. So I guess in a certain sense, if Camazots was to face Mothra, I'm pretty sure Mothra would easily beat Camazots if it came to like using light, because if the bat is that bad at seeing light and it causes so much discomfort, then you might as well just be fighting blind against like Mothra, really, when it comes to that, really. So Camazots, I don't think would stand a chance. Which was easily the case when Kong got up, grabbed Camazots and started beating the living crap out of it, like literally ape style, just dropping his hands on the bat. Very surprised it's still alive. And I think it's still alive. I'd hope it's still alive, because I'd like to see this kaiju in a follow-up film, because I think that would be so good if it would like face some of the flying kaijus like Rodan and Mothra and some of the others as well. Like, imagine it being alongside King Ghidorah. I feel like that would be such a good opportunity to see those two fight alongside one another, or at least bring Batra back. Bring Batra back with Camazots as his ally. That would be interesting, actually. Anyway, it finishes with Kong just punching this thing in the face. It goes down the hole, never to be seen again for the rest of the book, basically. And he kind of like looks down at this Sker buffalo that's been crushed by a tree. He just looks sad and depressed. And Dr. Hooper says towards Kong, like, being that big and being that powerful must be a lonely situation for him, basically. It's not something that I regret. It's not something that I'm, envious of, basically. Which is understandable because, apes are social creatures, really, and him being the last of his kind, it's understandable that he would be lonely and depressed in a certain sense, which is understandable. I kind of like how they add the human aspect into it with Kong, because with the human aspect we relate to him in a certain sense, and that's what builds the bond between reader and characters, basically. Really, you need to have like that sharedness between you and the characters, basically, so you can relate. And it ends on a note of we see two characters from the Godzilla vs. Kong film. We see Lieutenant Lin, and we also see the Doctor, who was the caretaker of the young Iwi girl, who we do see in this book as well. I believe there's a picture of her. Where is she? Where is she? What was the woman's name as well? It was Dr. Brooks. That's it, Dr. Brooks. Sorry, his name. He wasn't. Sorry, Lin wasn't a lieutenant. He was a corporal. My bad. I keep mixing that up. There she is. There she is, little girl. And it kind of ends off with the captain going to see her friend Tam in the hospital. She knocks on the door, and then it kind of ends like with it opening the door up with some light, as she says, what was it? Quit knocking and get in here, hotshot. Basically, they're close friends. They're basically like, I think Tam is like her wingman, basically. That's how close they are in a relationship. Yeah, so it kind of ends with also with Kong going into the cave. He pulls back some vines on the wall. He sees himself fighting Godzilla. So it gives like a nice preview to the next comic, basically. I'd like to see the comic. I'd like to read the comic. So I might grab that and then get the opportunity to read it, because it looks very interesting, really. And then we're kind of left off with some lovely pieces of art, which I actually found quite lovely. And there's even some creature profiles of these animals. And there's Camazots. That's the picture of Camazots. It looks so much like a freaking amalgamation of a hybridized like wyvern and a bat. It looks really good looking. There's some art of Kong with the pilots flying at him. There's some beautiful artwork of Godzilla there, and Kong jumping up in the sky. Looks really gorgeous. I absolutely love some of these artworks. I think that's my favourite piece of the artwork, with Godzilla fighting Kong there on the cave painting. Sorry if you can't see it very well, the light is a little bit bright. I should really sort that out. I should have done this in a day, but I was a little bit busy today. I had to get some bets sorted for the Grand National. Didn't win, unfortunately. I only had one each way. Unfortunately, though, the second place horse I had a bet on to win, so I was that close to winning it. It wasn't much. It was like maybe £11 or so. I think I had one that came fourth, I think, and that was like a good 66 to 1 or so. So not bad odds, really. An awful lot of horses got held up as well. A couple of the chaps fell off as well, which was quite unfortunate. There was even one that ran through like the string barricade, which was meant to like stop horses running through it. But like, again, what's like a string little piece of like line going to do to stop a horse? It'll run through anything. It'll run through concrete if it wants to. Wouldn't end well for the poor thing, but yeah. So yeah, that's the Kingdom Kong. I should have named the title of this. I just called it like Kong, but it's not. It's Kingdom Kong. Lovely comic. Very heavy on dialogue, so you won't see much action really until you get like thirds of the ways into it. But the story was interesting. I love the dynamic between the captain and her squadron teammates and all that. And there were some nice little hints between like Skull Island and of now basically, and it kind of gives like small little instances of the preview for the next comic that leads into the movie. That's kind of the unfortunate thing, really, is that you don't learn that these things are comics until the movie comes out, you know, because I ended up reading these after the film of Godzilla vs. Kong. But again, that's the thing. Sometimes they'll release prequels, or sometimes they'll do like books, like as the film comes out, so you get more background on like a character's past, which is what this book is basically. It's just like a retelling of like Kong's past in a certain sense, which is nice, really. And yes, I will be doing Godzilla Dominion hopefully sometime next month, because I've got to interchange. If you've noticed, I've been interchanging each book and each gameplay throughout the weeks basically. The gameplay is a little bit more stagnant, like sometimes it could be like one every day or maybe one every 3 days. It's just to keep like the uploads not stagnated in a certain sense. So I'm not uploading every day, but I'm not uploading like less than every 3 or 4 days basically. So you guys have something to watch whilst I'm like preparing, like editing for a game or like reading another book basically. Just to let you all know, I'm sure you've already caught up on my schedule. I just want to let you guys know what's up basically. So yes, that has been Kingdom Kong. I hope you all enjoyed the review. It's a little bit of a long review, I know, I'm sorry about that. I like to rabbit and all that, as you do. If you don't know, for my American friends, rabbit means talk, so, you know, the more you know and all that crap. Anyway, thank you all ever so much for watching, lads and ladies. Tomorrow I will more than likely put up another gameplay of Elden Ring. What I want to do is I want to get through Elden Ring so I can then focus on interswitching between 2 games that I'm playing, which will be Bloodborne and another little secret game for you guys to enjoy. I won't tell you what it is yet, but trust me, you're going to enjoy it. It's pretty funny and it's pretty dark. I do like my dark content and stuff like that, so it will be interesting to play that game. So, with that, lads and ladies, I thank you ever so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you all in the next video of whatever I do around it. Take care, my friends.